Welcome to Visions, a series of visits to almost everywhere. I'm your host, Herb Malsman. Continuing on this episode with our visit to England, on the 6th of June 1994, we arrived at the Tower of London about 1 in the afternoon. We were greeted in the Queen's house by Catherine with a C. Now, I guess in the Tower's heyday, the 6th of June was just another spring day. We'll find out. Although this introduction was created and produced in the Bronx, the rest takes place on location at the Tower of London. Our guide for this opening segment is
Chief Yeoman Warder Norman Jackson.
Chief Yeoman Warder Norman Jackson. Now, what is yeoman? What is warder?
Yeoman is a long story. It's a word which has been taken out of its time and place and now is misused in many ways. Basically, the original of the word was a trained soldier, an archer. The word yo coming from probably a colloquial pronunciation of yew, which was the wood favoured for the making of the longbow. Warder, well, a ward is an enclosed area, and the Tower of London has two, the inner and outer ward, and it harks back to the time when the Tower of London became less and less a royal residence and seat of government, and more as a state prison. And of course, as you know, the term warder now is almost entirely used by the prison service.
Well, the word yo is very popular back in New York City, my hometown. Yo, how's it going? So yo is taken up significance in America.
Yes, well, gradually the word evolved out of the trained soldier and became to be used as in direct reference to a very powerful middle class, very conservative farming class in 17th and 18th century England, the yeoman's stock. Basically what it was that these archers were well paid, and at times in the 12th and 13th century, when the Black Death was raging through Europe, there was a lot of unfarmed land, and these people bought land. It was theirs. They owed tip their hat to no master, and of course they kept within their own class structure. Farming family married into farming family. Gradually the territories enlarged. As I said, by the time of the 17 and 1800s came along, they formed a very strong, very powerful, very conservative, deeply religious middle class.
We're the voices on this series, and we're going to be spending some time with almost the voice of Roger Moore.
Yeah, well, thank you. I don't know if I take that as a compliment or not.
No, he's got a great voice. Describe your outfit. Those into drinking gin, I guess, isn't this the same outfit as on Gordon's? Not Gordon's gin, but what bottle?
Beefeater gin. Beefeater gin. Yeah, the name Beefeater, which we are stuck with, is a very ancient nickname. We don't know the origins. It probably comes out of the fact that because of our rather elite position here at the Tower of London, guarding the palace and guarding the royal family, that we were given a regular, probably daily ration of bread, meat and ale. A high privilege. People who weren't getting their share, of course, would be a bit scathing about it, and the term beefeater was more of an insult than a compliment. But the uniform, yes, on the beefeater bottle, which is our state dress, which is, of course, is the very flamboyant scarlet and gold. The one I'm wearing is our, what we call blue undress, dark blue, red trimmings, full-skirted, full-sleeved. On the chest is the royal cipher, the crown, and the initials ER with the Roman numeral 2, which is Elizabeth Regina, Queen Elizabeth II, because we are members of the Queen's bodyguard. My hat is a slight evolving out of the Tudor bonnet. It's high-crowned, with a representation of a Tudor rose on the front. Again, it's dark blue and red.
Okay. And with all that, and of course this goes back to the medieval days, I guess.
Oh, yes.
You're carrying a rather modern piece of equipment. Well, you're carrying two pieces of equipment. Explain to both of them.
Well, the first piece of equipment, of course, is a silver-top cane.
Slapping people with that?
No, it's just a kind of staff of office. When I'm in my ceremonial uniform, I carry a silver-topped mace. The top is representing the central tower, which we know as the White Tower. As the Chief Yeoman Warder, it's just a staff of office. The other piece of equipment, I'm afraid, in this day and age is rather necessary. It's It's a shortwave radio, a walkie-talkie.
A walkie-talkie, that's rather odd. And then I'm looking around, and as we look at, of course, this is the Tower of London as it was in whatever century it was, right from, what was the century? What is the circa here?
Well, the tower, they started building the tower on the orders of King William I, William the Conqueror. Strange enough, you know, it's here it is, it's June the 6th, and William came from Normandy to conquer what he considered was his kingdom of England. And then, as I said, 50 years ago, we went back again and reconquered Normandy. So it's rather ironic this day should be it. Modern, the most recent building is over 150 years old. It replaced a building which was destroyed by fire, and it's called the Waterloo Block. It was built as a barracks for the garrison here. But with the Tower of London, it was started in 1078. And it took 20 years to complete the fortress part of it. But the Tower of London had so many separate government functions going on within its wall, each one requiring its own buildings. I mean, there were archives and records, a law court, there was an arsenal here, all the coinage was made here, ordnance survey, map making started here, the Royal Observatory started here, and buildings through the centuries have come and gone. But as I said, there's nothing newer here than 150 years old. It's a very living place. We live here for a start.
Let's describe the surroundings. Well, actually, first, we met in the Queen's house. What is the significance of it being called the Queen's house?
Because we have a Queen. The Tower of London is...
I'm aware of that, but...
No, the Tower of London, you see, is still a royal palace. It's the Queen owns this in what they call in right of crown, although, of course, it's owned by the country. It's maintained by the government. And the house, well, as you say, which is known as the Queen's house. If we had a king, it would be known as the King's house, because it's their house, purely and simply.
I expected to see the Queen come out from, obviously not, but, you know, just the image of that. Describe this. It is a beautiful. I've been apologizing for my outfit, which I usually do. I came out thinking it was going to rain today, but it is a beautiful. This is just a perfect spring day.
You hear that? It doesn't always rain over here.
Oh, it says that, but it started out rather threatening today, but it's
yes.
What are we looking at?
Well, we're looking across what we call Tower Green. There are two areas of green lawns surrounded by trees. You can probably hear with the leaves rustling in the breeze. One part of the green, the one in front of there's a church just across away here for about 30-40 yards away. I'm afraid that has rather sinister connotations because it did in its day have an execution site. 5 ladies and 1 man were put to death there. 3 of them were Queens of England.
Really? They just collected them all?
Well, no.
It was a one-day deal?
No. There was over a period of time.
For the price of one?
As many people probably know, that King Henry VIII had a very difficult love life. 6 wives, I beg your pardon, of which 2 were put to death. The first one was his second wife, Anne Boleyn. She had failed disastrously to give Henry a son, so she had to be got rid of.
She was of a reason?
Well, yes. Henry was getting desperate, and so she was tried by full process of law. Naturally enough, she was found guilty of adultery and incest.
How long did that take?
Well, she was here for a few days. She was married to Henry for 3 years, but...
How long was the trial?
Oh, the trial only took a day. In fact, probably only an hour. As I said, it was process of law, but when Henry wanted Anne Boleyn found guilty, she was found guilty, and as simple as that. Mind you, there are enough people who hated Anne to perjure their souls away, to give the evidence required for the tribunal, the court. And Henry's 5th wife, Catherine Howard, well, she was a naughty girl. You know, Good Time Catherine.
Is that what she was called, Good Time Catherine?
Well, no, it's just a little joke. Well, yes. She was a very, very young, extremely flighty, not much intelligence, I'm afraid. I mean, being married to King Henry VIII, but still carrying on private assignations is not something you can get away with too long. And of course, she was caught, and I'm afraid she paid a terrible price.
Okay. And that takes care of all 3 then?
Well, 2.
2.
The other ones, his first wife died of an illness in tragic circumstances. His second wife was executed. His third wife, Jane Seymour, died in childbirth. Marriage number 4 was Anne of Cleves. That marriage was annulled on non-consummation grounds.
And she wasn't executed?
No. She did very well out of the divorce.
How did she get away with it?
Well, the marriage wasn't consummated, and she agreed just to have the annulment of the marriage. I mean, by this time, this country had broken away completely from the Roman Church, the Roman Catholic Church, and Henry was supreme power. Now he didn't have to ask the Pope for a divorce; he just did it.
Okay. So does that kind of take care of the history? I'm sure there must be more history.
Oh,
so
the Tower of London. I mean, it's 900 years it's been standing here, and it's had a dramatic interface, that's a modern word for it, with the history of this country. So many people came here. We even had Americans here.
Really?
Yes, in 1780 we had a Henry Lawrence here from North Carolina. He was in prison here. He belonged to the Revolutionary Committee. But he was changed for Cornwallis, who was being held a prisoner on the other side.
Right.
William Penn was imprisoned here for a while.
It's a busy place.
Very busy, very busy.
Also, two princes, and I'm a little unclear, King Richard, and I'm not really good at history, so fill us in on the two princes that disappeared here in the tower.
Well, the king at the time was King Edward IV. He had two sons, Richard the Duke of York, who was 12 years old. Sorry, beg your pardon, I'll start again. Yes, Richard Duke of York was 12, and his brother Edward, who was 10. When the king died, his son was to become king. The country was being run by their uncle, Richard the Duke of Gloucester. At what stage we don't know, when he thought he could become king, but by the simple expedient of having his two nephews declared illegitimate, took the crown for himself to become Richard III. Some time after Richard had been crowned king, the princes who were brought here to the Tower of London for safe custody, they disappeared, literally off the face of the earth. The bones of two children were found here in the Tower nearly 200 years later. These are now in Westminster Abbey in a place called Innocents Corner. Richard always gets the blame for it. The evidence against him is, albeit circumstantial, but is overwhelming, whereas evidence to suppose anybody else is fairly sketchy. Even circumstantial is very, very sketchy. So Richard had an awful lot to lose as long as the princes remained alive.
And that's when the crown kind of changed families, and today Queen Elizabeth II is a descendant of that family?
Oh, the present Queen, I mean, her lineage goes back through all our royal families, the different families, right back to about the year 820. But yeah, no, although they were, shall we say, slightly different parts of the family, they were all of the same dynasty. They were all what they call Plantagenets, and they were all of the family of the Yorkists. This was putting an end, really, I suppose, to the long power struggle called the Wars of the Roses, which went on for about 30 years.
Okay, now we're looking at a lawn over here, a lawn.
Yeah.
Sort of a divider, and everything is cobblestone, of course. And I will ask you this question, and never more will I ask. Talk about
nevermore the ravens.
Talk about the ravens. Are they earthbound?
Yes, we have 8 here. They are fat, they are lazy. They are carrion eaters mostly. Should one of the ravens escape from here, it would not be able to look after itself. Because they're reared, most of them are reared by hand from fledglings. We do have 8. They're in magnificent condition. But to stop them flying away, we clip the flight feathers on one wing. Only the flight feathers. They grow again very quickly, 6-8 weeks. But it doesn't harm them at all. They don't need to fly. I say, just looking at them now, this beautiful blue-black gloss they have on them.
Sure.
But they're here to perpetuate a legend going back centuries that should the ravens ever leave the tower would fall. Now, whether this means actually the structure would fall down or fall to outside forces, we don't know. But the loss of the tower in centuries past would have been considered so disastrous because everything that was important was here, that they would never recover from the blow, and it would have been the end of the monarchy.
Yeah. So the ravens, who does the clipping? Because they look like they can get pretty serious. Well,
yes, they're certainly they're not tame. They tolerate, as the most you can say from them. They're certainly not tame. And yes, we have a yeoman warder who looks after them. He's known as the Raven Master. He feeds them, cleans their cages.
He's the guy without the hand.
Well, yeah, well, he wears gloves even then. When he's cutting the wings, he wears gloves, believe me.
Do they know him? I mean...
Oh, yes, yeah, yes. I mean, he knows them intimately. They all have their own characters, just like people. Some are fairly docile and obedient, others are out-and-out villains. They have a strict hierarchy. There's an imbalance of male and females, but they all know their place. Breeding season's over now, so they've quietened down and
taking it easy.
That's it. They're now getting into their full-fledged. During the breeding season, they tend to look a bit scruffy because a lot of the feathers drop out, and whilst they're regaining their plumage. Right. But the sun's shining on one there. It's a beautiful blue-black colour.
Just looks gorgeous. And we're looking, of course, at a guardhouse where there's a guard, and the hat is known as the... I don't even know if it's a hat. It's a...
It is. It's called a bearskin. There's one here to the right of us as well, out guarding the Queen's house. It's called a bearskin for the simple reason that's exactly what it is. It's the fur from the Black Bear. It's a battle honour. Coming from the Battle of Waterloo. Right.
And of course, people with cameras, and they come walking up trying to get the guards to smile, and the theory being, and the concept being that the guards never smile and they never react.
Well, they would only react if you tried to bypass them. But no, they're not. Whilst they're on duty, they're not supposed to smile or engage in conversation. The thing is, if they were caught doing it by one of their NCOs, of course, then their period of duty would be somewhat longer.
Right. The gentleman behind me, the guard behind me, as I was coming through, of course, I'm carrying the visitor's pass, and I was coming into the Queen's house, and it's off limits. You're not allowed in here. And I just saw his eyes following me as I came in, so he didn't actually look, but I caught his eyes following, kind of watching me.
Yeah.
Are those weapons loaded?
No, they're not loaded, but ammunition is readily available. Yes, right. I mean they are. I mean these are. Okay, they're dressed in the scarlet with the bearskins, but they're not toy soldiers. They are, in fact, the officer of the guard who's taken over today. He's only just come back from Bosnia himself. So they're all doing, military service around the world.
Battle hardened and
that's it.
Ready.
Yeah. When they built the tower, they didn't make any facilities for prisoners. One thing, a great disappointment to visitors, is the fact that we don't have any cells or dungeons here.
Oh.
Yeah. The only thing that we had plenty of are towers. I mean, outside of the central tower, the great central keep, the towers. That's reduced to 19 other towers. And every room and every one of these towers at some time has held prisoners, some more than others. And the one that we're coming up to now, the Bloody Tower, was used more extensively as a prison than a lot of the others.
And the word keep, I guess, is prison.
No,
the word keep?
No, the keep is just the large central building. In actual fact, the word dungeon comes from really is the keep. The original word of if you saw dungeon, would in actual fact meant tower. But gradually it reversed its meaning from tower to a subterranean cell.
Right. Okay, you're listening to Visions, a series of visits to almost everywhere. I'm your host, Herb Malzman. We're about to go into the Bloody Tower, and we are with Yeoman Warder.
Chief Yeoman Warder.
Chief Yeoman Warder.
Norman Jackson.
Norman Jackson, who sounds very much like Roger Moore. So here we go. We're about to come out of the breeze now and head upstairs. We're behind a group of people. Let you hear some of the sounds as we come through. Describe where we are.
Well, we're in the entranceway of the Bloody Tower. The Bloody Tower, originally, it was built as a gatehouse, purely and simply. And on the right here, we have we can see the top part of what is called a portcullis, which is a grill-type gate. Very heavy, oak bound in iron. The one here weighs about 2 tons. In times of attack, the gate would be allowed to drop under its own weight. It has spikes along the bottom. These would dig into the ground and form a very formidable barrier. And then when it was over, of course, using the windlass that is here, this winch, the gateway could be lifted up again to open the gateway underneath.
It's sort of, and it's kind of a waffle shape. Waffled, squared. How do you describe that?
Well, that's it, yes. It's a kind of square, open square grill of a gate. One that is it has to do 2 purposes. One, it's to form a very, very strong barrier, but also you have to reduce the weight. Otherwise, if it was a solid gateway, you would never lift it. thing again.
Very imposing.
I mean, it weighs 2 tons as it is. If it was solid oak with an iron, you're talking about 5 tons, and as I said, you need a tremendous amount of manpower to raise it up again. Right. And so you've got lightness with strength.
Mm-hmm. And of course, everything is just about as it was.
Oh yes, right. Yes. This one is contemporary with the tower, so we're talking about 600-700 years.
Right. Okay, and we're coming through now. We have a fireplace, not a working fireplace, off to the left, and what else?
Well, the room is scattered about with period furniture. It's a late Elizabethan furniture. And it gives an idea, strange enough, of the conditions that prisoners could expect here in the tower. For the most part, the prisoners, far from being chained against the wall, were allowed to live in great comfort, provided they paid for it. And within reason, a prisoner was allowed anything.
Paid for it how?
Well, with their own money. They might be in prison, but they or their family still had money until such times as they were executed, and whether their lands and property were forfeit or not, it depended on what the sentence was or the law at the time.
In other words, they kept on paying until it was time to go?
Oh, yes, indeed, yeah.
Oh, my goodness, this sounds like a good deal.
Furniture like this would have probably been brought from their house or just hired from a furniture hire in the city of London. Right. A prisoner would be entitled to servants to look after him. Did
the prisoner have the right to say, hey, why should I pay? Leave me alone?
Oh, yes, he did that, in which case, of course, he slept on the floor. He got nothing, so the choice was his.
It's a tough choice.
But it's also furnished to reflect the imprisonment of one man, Sir Walter Raleighs.
Was here?
Yes, his portrait above the fireplace there. He was here for 13 years in this tower.
Right in this
room, and upstairs he had a bedroom. And in common with a lot of prisoners, his wife lived here with him for about 5 years.
He was beheaded, was he not?
Eventually, yes, yeah, at Westminster.
Yeah, my goodness, so this was his living quarters right here.
Well, the furniture is contemporary with his. It's not his furniture. That would have gone a long time ago.
I mean, the structure, of course, is where he was, right here.
Oh, yes, yes. You're looking now, if you look at it, it's pretty much through his eyes.
Yeah. Okay.
He did a lot of writing. He wrote a history of the world.
He wrote the history of the world?
Well, he started writing it, but it took
more than 13 years.
Well, no, in actual fact, he was writing for one person in particular, the eldest son of King James the First, who hated Raleigh. But he was a great favourite of King James's son, Henry, the Prince of Wales. Henry idolised Raleigh. He worshipped him as a hero of the people. Was King James probably one of the reasons he hated him, because he was a hero of the people.
Well, I mean, he was a favoured guy, popular, but he went anyway.
Yes, yeah. He went
got rid of many.
That's it, yeah. Strange enough, though, what many people don't know is he never set foot in Virginia or Carolinas. Never set foot there.
Yeah, but the cigarettes bear his name.
Well, no doubt it does.
Okay.
He was the driving force behind it. They had the vision for it, but Elizabeth wouldn't let him go.
I had heard that it was narrow coming through, and it is narrow coming through.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Okay. Okay, we're about to go up. We're gonna stop tape now and get up on the top. So we'll be right back with you. We're moving up a very, very, very narrow stone stairway. Very narrow. Impossible to interview and speak at this point except just me.
Never got to anybody.
And we're just going around and around and around. And now we're up and landing. And 1, 2, 4 steps down in the opposite direction. And here we are in a bedroom with a 4-poster. Oh my goodness, okay.
Sends the which Sir Walter enjoyed because it was most unusual for a prisoner to get this amount of space. 2 distinct floors plus a little dressing room.
So this was his bedroom here?
Yes, indeed, yes. There again, the big 4-poster bed there is, we call it big in actual fact by modern day standards. Of course, it's quite small. The average height of people in those days was somewhat shorter than it is now.
Right. So this is Sir Walter Raleighs' bedroom, and he had his wife here, and it was very pleasant for a few years, and 13 being an unlucky number.
Well, in his case, yeah.
In his case. I guess that's where that came from then. Okay, so we're Anyway, you seem to be coming outside. We are coming outside. Back into the open air again.
Yeah, this is called Raleigh's Walk. It's extended much further than we see it now because the houses which are here on my right weren't here then. So he would have had quite a long way of walking. And he became one of the sights of London.
He did, or the...
Oh, he did. Sir Walter Raleighs, he would walk along here, and in those days, the outer wall, just between the two walls below here, was sometimes there was a marketplace, or people walking beside the river, which we can see just over the wall here. And they would shout to him, and he would talk back and give his theories and all the rest of it.
Get me out.
Well... something like that.
This is the river.
All the time he was here, he was under the River Thames. Yes. All the time he was here, he was under sentence of death. As I say, as you know, the death sentence was eventually carried out,
right,
but only after a disastrous trip to South America to look for gold, which he failed to do.
That sealed his fate, I guess, in a way.
Well, yeah, there was a lot of when he came back. The King of Spain accused Raleigh of attacking his men in South America and demanded that Raleigh be handed over to them for punishment. King James was a coward and would have willingly done it, but he knew that the people wouldn't allow it. And so, because the death penalty which had been imposed on him in 1603 was still in existence, the death penalty was invoked and he was executed at Westminster, where the Houses of Parliament now stand.
Well, he wouldn't be around today anyway, so I guess the point is moot.
Yeah.
However we go, we're leaving. Okay, we're outside again. We're back on the walk again, where we started, passing the two ravens. I said I wasn't going to mention them. I would mention them nevermore, but I have to. The names.
Yeah, they've all got names. Naturally enough, an animal has a pet name. Some of them are derived from Celtic names like Hugin and things like this. Others are more prosaic names like Charlie.
Do we know which ones those are over here?
Oh, well, I don't know. They are colour-coded. They have a ring around their leg with a colour. And if you go down to the ravens' cages, you can marry up the colour with the ravens' names. But
you can hear them.
Oh, yes. But to me, they're just black birds, I'm afraid.
Big.
Trained soldier and became... to be used as in direct reference to a very powerful middle class, very conservative farming class in 17th and 18th century England, the yeoman stock. Basically what it was that these archers were well paid, and at times in the 12th and 13th century when the Black Death was raging through Europe, there was a lot of unfarmed land, and these people bought land. It was theirs. They don't tip their hat to no master, and of course they kept within their own class structure. Farming family married into farming family. Gradually the territories enlarged. As I said, by the time of the 17 and 1800s came along, they formed a very strong, very powerful, very conservative, deeply religious middle class. The origin of the word was a trained soldier, an archer. The word yo coming from probably a colloquial pronunciation of yew, which was the wood favoured for the making of the longbow. Warder, well, a ward is an enclosed area, and the Tower of London has two, the inner and outer ward, and it harks back to the time when the Tower of London became less and less a royal residence and seat of government, and more as a state prison. And of course, as you know, the term warder now is almost entirely used by the prison service.
Well, the word yo is very popular back in New York City, my hometown. Yo, how's it going? So yo is taking up a significance in America.
Yes, well, gradually the word evolved out of the...
We're the voices on this series, and we're going to be spending some time with almost the voice of Roger Moore.
Yeah, well, thank you. I don't know if I'd take that as a compliment or not.
No, he's got a great voice. Describe your outfit. Those into drinking gin, I guess. Isn't this the same outfit as on Gordon's? Not Gordon's gin, but what bottle?
Beefeater gin. Beefeater gin. Yeah, the name Beefeater, which we are stuck with, is a very ancient nickname. We don't know the origins. It probably comes out of the fact that because of our rather elite position here at the Tower of London, guarding the palace and guarding the royal family, that we were given a regular, probably daily ration of bread, meat and ale. A high privilege. People who weren't getting their share, of course, would be a bit scathing about it, and the term beefeater was more of an insult than a compliment. But the uniform, yes, on the beefeater bottle, which is our state dress, which is, of course, is the very flamboyant scarlet and gold. The one I'm wearing is our what we call blue undress, dark blue, red trimmings, full-skirted, full-sleeved. On the chest is the royal cipher, the crown, and the initials ER with the Roman numeral 2, which is Elizabeth Regina, Queen Elizabeth II, because we are members of the Queen's bodyguard. My hat is a slight evolving out of the Tudor bonnet. It's high-crowned with a representation of a Tudor rose on the front. Again, it's dark blue and red.
Okay. And with all that, and of course this goes back to the medieval days, I guess.
Oh, yes.
You're carrying a rather modern piece of equipment. Welcome to Visions, a series of visits to almost everywhere. I'm your host, Herb Malsman. Continuing on this episode with our visit to England, on the 6th of June 1994, we arrived at the Tower of London about 1 in the afternoon. We were greeted in the Queen's house by Catherine with a C. Now, I guess in the Tower's heyday, the 6th of June was just another spring day. We'll find out. Although this introduction was created and produced in the Bronx, the rest takes place on location at the Tower of London. Our guide for this opening segment is
Chief Yeoman Warder Norman Jackson.
Chief Yeoman Warder Norman Jackson. Now, what is yeoman? What is warder?
Yeoman is a long story. It's a word which has been taken out of its time and place and is now misused in many ways. Basically,